Also want to talk a bit about child poverty. There was the CEO of Child Poverty Action Group, Sarita Divis, I believe it is, on Q&A in the weekend. And I think maybe, should we start there? Let's start there, eh? We'll start there. Because she was there and they were talking about this government missing its mark, missing its targets, but also there was quite a lot of conversation that came up to do with how school lunches are impacting their missing of the mark quite so badly. So let's have a look at a clip right now. Child poverty under Luxon's government is increasing far higher than anyone thought it would.
What was happening after the legislation came in, we were seeing that decrease in child.
So it's the legislation under another political party, not the guys, but another one. After that legislation came in, child poverty was going down.
Poverty, and now for the last 2 years we're seeing it increase. So the stats before was the first time it was increasing, and these stats as well are showing that the increase is there. We are increasing and we need to do something urgently about it.
Let's focus on material hardship because that is one of the key measures here.
Yeah.
You have an index of 17 sort of things which they measure, and if you have or if a household lacks 6 or more of those, they are considered to be a family in material hardship. So what are we talking about? We're talking about what, going without fruit and vegetables or heating, those sorts of things?
Yeah, that's exactly. And
this also, not to interrupt too much, because it's not about this ties in so beautifully for the Gary economics, where one of the stats he says in the UK is half of the people in the UK don't have enough money to keep the heat on and feed their children. Right, that's what the research shows. So think about that for the UK and see how this relates to what we're looking at in New Zealand right now.
That's children's futures then, isn't it? Material hardship is an important indicator. There's the 3 primary measures. There's the first is around incomes before housing, after housing costs, and the material hardships. Those are very important measures for us to see where we're tracking.
Sure. So for young kids in those homes of material hardship, what impact does that have on them at such a formative age?
So it flows through to education. So for example, the Food in Schools program is so important. And that is one of the levers that the government could use to alleviate. Because
one of the material hardships is enough food to eat. So if the school's providing some food to eat, that's one of the things that helps take kids, one of the markers at least, to help take them out of poverty.
Material hardship. So material hardship, some of those ones are around, do you have fresh fruit and vegetables? Do you have food in the household? And we must remember as well that these statistics are from about a year ago. So there's other statistics, and what we're hearing on the ground is that child poverty is even worse. So the latest New Zealand Health Survey showed that 1 in 4 children are in households where they're going without food often or sometimes.
So does that make the Food in Schools program even more important?
Yes, and it was good to see Louise Upston in her press release around the stats saying that...
She referenced it, didn't she?
Yeah, she did. She said that this is one of the ways that we're wanting to address child poverty.
So that's clip number 1. Now, true, clip number 2 speaks specifically to school lunches, but sir, I know someone that, what was it, JC and the Pigeon Cat? Shit, so feeding people helps? Wow. Very true. Chewie.
Exactly. So why are we bitching about a school getting butter chicken 12 days in a row? Surely that will unlock the full potential of the next generation.
The information and the news stories that are coming out over the weekend about the waste that's happening with those school lunches now, and we're seeing photos of rubbish bins full from the bottom to the top with school lunches, and it's so interesting to think about, what the kids want to eat. I'm not just saying give them lollies and Coca-Cola, but if you give them shit, they don't eat it. One part of the political spectrum goes, well, they mustn't be hungry. The other part go, we actually have to give them food that's going to sustain them and is good for them and they want. right? Mr. Luxon, if you want to run this place like a business, then what you do for your customers is you provide for them a good or service that they'd like to purchase. You don't just deliver them any old slop and shit. So if we're going to go down this path of running the country like a business, Mr. Luxon, then what you need to be doing is providing a product to these children who want this product. The product has to be to the standard, and it has to be the style, the taste, the whatever kind of food that they actually want to eat. Or else you're kind of speaking out both sides of your mouth about my business experience and running a country.
Yeah.
Is that fair, Chewie?
So, yeah, it is. Do you remember one of the things before this rolled out that Seymour was talking about was the waste? And I think we worked it out, and a couple of other outlets worked it out, that the wastage in this program was probably sub 5%.
Yeah, tiny.
Tiny amount of wastage, and anybody that deals with making food en masse would acknowledge that. I saw mention, and admittedly this was tracking one school, since school has gone back, wastage is at 70%.
Yeah, that's exactly what I just saw in this story. Try and find it.
Yeah, so I don't know if that's being looked at. One of the things that Seymour also said, he was on record as saying this would be one of the best meals that you've ever had. Clearly is not meeting up to that. He's mentioned that he's received feedback from teachers and parents that these are amazing. They're enjoyed and wanted. He has nothing to back that up. That has been requested for people to see the correspondence that he's talking about. He doesn't have it. He's made it up. Because I'm not in the house, I can say this. He's a fucking liar. He has been lying about this since the get-go, and his only way is, maybe if I'll tell more lies, I'll dig myself out of this. It's not working. Louise Upston, it's not Louise Upston. Who is it? Your favourite, your crush, your national crush.
Erica.
What's her name? Erica Stanford. She is right to not want any piece of this, because it is, much like the food that's being delivered, nuclear waste.
It's the same sort of vibe as Luxon running away from the treaty principles bill, isn't it? There's some parallels there for running away from something you're actually responsible for, Mr. Luxon and Mrs. Stanford. We'll go with.
We gave a shit ton of public money to an international company with a record of putting horse meat in food to prisoners, to doing outright bribery, and just being really shit at what they do. But they could do it for $3 a meal. In the process of that, they've cost local jobs. We're not using local produce. And then what we're getting is arriving late, cold, burnt, soggy, thrown in the bin. This is not an effective use of public money.
The chief executive of Child Poverty Action Group, Sarita Divis, then spoke to Guy and specifically, Chewie, about school lunches. Let's hear this.
That's what we want to see in the next budget, something done about those cuts and to reverse those cuts. So with, in conjunction with Health Coalition, Aotearoa, the New Zealand Education Union, we campaigned around, and the whole community sector and the community campaigned around to make sure that that Food in Schools program continued. It's great to see the national government saying that there's that commitment to it, and we need to make sure it works. So with 1 in 4 children not having enough food, that could be they don't have the breakfast and dinner. Yep. So we need to make sure that lunch that they receive is nutritious, healthy and delicious, so that they do get those educational benefits and those health benefits.
And is it delivering, in your view, under the new scheme?
Under the new scheme, it is definitely not delivering. It is, and I challenge anyone to be able to make lunch for $3. And especially if that is going to be one of the main meals for that child.
She must be confused. I mean, like Mountain Tui's written about it here. Look, it's easy to do lunch for $3. Look, just look, there it is. Easy. That's how you do lunch for $3. And no, remember this. Hang on, stop. Right? This is the thing about private enterprise. Remember, the difference between private enterprise and public owned is there's got to be a profit margin on top. So that's not a $3 meal. That's like a $1.50 meal. Because it's a company. There's a profit margin on top. Has anyone ever asked Seymour that question? What profit margin do they have? Because we keep getting told about these $3 meals. How much of that is profit? Half? A third? Are those $2 meals? What actually are they?
So mainstream media that's listening, that's a good question. You should write that down in your book.
And your book headed up, the book that's headed up, ideas from BHN we can use tomorrow.
Look, Pat, you and I have both experienced meals made at a very low cost.
Yeah.
Do you go back to that place like I do?
No.
You don't.
Well, it depends. Sorry.
I do.
If it's bad. Okay, let's be specific. Talking about the bowling club.
We're talking about the bowling club.
Of course, because they do it
set
right.
Up, it's a profit-making business that serves 800 plus meals every weekday night.
$4.
And they do it for a couple of bucks or free if you can't afford it. You can make tasty meals very, very cheaply en masse if you want to.
I mean, I don't know their business, so I'll just ask this. I think you know it better than me, actually. One of their business practices is they get donations and they get food given to them from businesses in the region, don't they? Which means if you're going to do school lunches in a similar sort of way, there needs to be a community feel about it. But then if you're talking about feeding the kids in your community, maybe that's not such a hard stretch. And if you hadn't tried to centralize food, remember how you didn't want anything else centralized, national? Now, remember how you didn't want 3 Waters centralized, and you didn't want the health system centralized, you didn't want the polytech centralized, but you thought, let's centralize the food. Yeah. And all of those, we've heard numbers like 2,500 jobs gone. All those little groups around. I read a story, I was going to try and get them on, from Gisborne about a company that's gone bankrupt because they've lost this contract. All those ones that were in the area that had reason, because they knew the kids, they knew the family, they knew the school, to actually provide things. You've gone, centralising is the best way to go.
They centralise exactly what doesn't need to be centralised. Like this is a perfect example of no, it should be local. We are a country that produces an enormous amount of food. We have so many resources here that the fact that we haven't had a school food program nationwide, every school set up, part and parcel of the mission statement of every primary school, every secondary school in the country, the fact that we have never had that, and the fact that we don't have that now in a country that produces as much food as we have is a national shame. Nobody's done it. Nobody's done it.
I didn't in the end up reaching out to these guys. I should have probably. Maybe I saw liquidators appointed to Gisborne-based school lunch provider Puku Ora. Award-winning Gisborne business that supplied thousands of lunches daily to local schools is closing the doors after the government's new school lunches program more than halved its contract. The founders of Puku Ora say changes with the national school lunch funding model meant they lost a core part of their business, making it difficult to operate. There you go. There's one example, and we've heard the number 2,000 to 2,500 jobs gone to give this to a centralised, because apparently centralising this is the right thing to do. Centralising everything else into Labour, evil, bad, socialist. This, good, perfect, spot on. Right.
Can I just say real quickly, Puku Ora is a great name.
Yeah. Very good name. Okay, let's get back to the end of this because we've got about 60 seconds to go, and we're still talking specifically to the CE of Child Poverty Action Group about school lunches in particular.
And especially if that is going to be one of the main meals for that child. So that flows through to health costs, life expectancy, education. We know education is a key way to get through, to break the cycle of poverty. And so and one of the other studies that came out showed that children in food insecure households are 4 years behind in their schooling. And so
think about this government, how they're putting in so much noise around kids at 15 not getting up to national standard. Well, food insecurity can drop a kid back by 4 years. That means they're performing like 11-year-olds. Maybe that's part of the answer, Mr. Luxon, Mrs. Stanford, about how to actually get your numbers up. You make sure the kids are fed well. I mean, we can start to debate things around national standards that John Key now as well. But if the research says that you can be up to 4 years behind with food insecurity, let's make the kids secure with their food. Add that in, see if it makes a difference. It doesn't, or it's not enough. Okay, let's do something else. But there's a pretty easy step in the right direction immediately, Chewie.
Yep, absolutely. And look, this is something with very clear benefits. And we were talking before about the increase in military spending and that sort of thing. That may very well be something we need to look at. But it's one of those things that the government was going, yeah, like we're really relaxed about doubling our military spending out of nowhere, unplanned. But we can't find money for this, for feeding kids. We found money instantly. Again, we have to say it, don't we? We found money instantly. Drop of a hat. Non-negotiable. Landlords, bam! We found it for tax cuts. Really minimal tax cuts for most people, but we found it instantly. Non-negotiable. Somehow feeding kids, bit hard, bit awkward.
That would be interesting. I wonder what the cost of feeding kids is per annum. It's like 100 and something million, eh? And they just gave Morris, whatever they're called, the tobacco guys, 200 million. So they're literally taking food out of the kids' mouths and putting it into big tobacco. We'll check that number, but I'm pretty sure it was 300 million, and they took 103 million out to 200 million. But hang on, they gave 200 million to the tobacco companies. That could have just paid for all the school. No one else sees, just me. All right, fair enough.
Big impact.
Yeah, it has a big, but I just wanted to say as well that when you do proactive policies like this, it can make a difference. So the Growing Up in New Zealand study showed that children in food insecure households, if they were getting government assistance, then actually 4 years later they were able to get out of food insecurity, whereas those that didn't have that government assistance, they weren't able to. So that's why incomes are so important as well.
There you go. There's a second clip, Joey. And if there's anything else you want to add, go for it. I mean, I think we've spelt out the ridiculous nature of this government. As soon as we say Philip Morris gets 200 mil or gets credited 200 mil, or the government chooses to take 200 mil less, however you want to word it, and then you find out that school lunches is about 200 mil, you know.
See, this might be shocking for some of our listeners, but this is where you start to I start dropping some clues that I might be a little bit socialist. Like, I know I hide it well, but I just think feeding kids should be on the mission statement. It's part of the school. Like, there's such a weird attitude to feeding kids at school from some segments of the New Zealand voting public, or at least the ones that vomit out their thoughts on Facebook and that sort of thing, that suddenly feeding kids is just a terrible failure to do, and that it's all down to the parents. You would be blown away about how many countries feed their kids at school as a matter of course and have always done so. Like, it's just a good idea. Some do it better than others. We should do it better than everybody.
Let me just remind people, I was just looking for the figure for the school lunches because, as we like to be right. Didn't find it immediately, but I did find this paragraph true. Now, I'll say this out loud, and everyone, make sure you're not having a cup of tea whilst I say this. I don't want to see or hear about any spit takes, but I'll read you the paragraph. The revised program brought the cost of each meal down to $3 and would, on paper, save taxpayers over $130 million a year without sacrifices to quality and nutrition.
And that, friends and family, was a lie. Like we always said it was going to be.
Yep. And remember, on the day that they said they showed it to us, there was fruit, there was yogurt, there was fresh bread, there was slice, there was muesli bars. And what did they deliver? That shit. Enough said. Let's have a look at some of the super chats that have come in. Kiwi Bird, thank you. Aotearoa is a wealthy country. If we can afford to give tax cuts to corporations and landlords, we can feed the kids proper food. I agree. I actually wonder, Chewie, if they delivered that to a prison, like if that was the food delivered to a prison, what would be the result? Like, would the prisoners be able to go, you're impinging on my human rights? Like, I wonder if they would be allowed to deliver that to prisoners, seeing this company also feeds prisoners. Or is this to be expected for a prisoner because, stuff them, let's just treat them as badly as possible? I genuinely wonder that, though. I wonder if anyone's got the answer for us on that.
I always bitch about that annual story about prisoners, what their Christmas meal is and how it's always too much for some people. Like that's the sort of picture that people want to see prisoners eating.
Yeah.
It's people locked up for crimes, for doing crimes. If they were eating that, people would be stoked. If you turned around and said, that's what we're feeding school kids, where is the outrage? The outrage is directed at their parents, these kids' parents. Well, if they don't want to eat that, they should be making their lunches like my mum used to. It's not the same. Kids shouldn't be punished for the sins of their parents. That's that's a red line.
I've got some evidence for you, Mr. Adjudicator. From 2020, New Zealand prison menu upgraded after 11 years. The old style of working was we fill them up on carbs. Spring Hill Corrections faculties Jimmy Byrne designed the new national prison menu. So here you go. Here's prison food. Just so we know what we're talking about. White bread has been replaced with healthier
these kids into
multigrain.
the prison system.
Well, maybe that's what the actual ultimate plan is. Here we go. I'll see if I can read this with my stupid old eyes. I guess this is in the morning, tea and sugar, mixed grain sandwiches, roast beef and relish with salad, egg and mayo salad, mixed grain sandwiches, tomato mayo salad. Oh, this makes sense next day, so it goes this way. Dinner, mixed grain, chicken and vegetable couscous salad. That sounds pretty woke. Lentils, bolognese, fish fillet, roast chicken, roast beef, fresh fruit. So what it would appear from this menu, right? It would appear
better than kids.
That the prisoners are eating far better than the kids. Now, I know you can't really read into this. It costs on average $6.03 to feed a prisoner because obviously there's going to be 3 meals plus things on the side there as well. But from looking at that menu, it would be pretty easy to draw the conclusion that prisoners are eating better than our school kids. Now, we're not saying this because we think prisoners shouldn't get decent food. We're saying this because we think maybe the kids could at least get the same. Maybe that's something we could do. Maybe the prisoners have got like a better union than the school kids. Maybe the school kids need to unionize. There you go, Chewie. We getting there now? How do we get there?
Well, I don't know. The other way that prisoners get better attention paid to their conditions is they start burning wings of the prison down. Kids?
Or they sit on the roof.
I don't know. Yeah, climb on the roof.
Don't do that. Don't do that, kids. Uncle Chewie's joking.
Take your principal prisoner.
Uncle Chewie
hostage taking.
Using metaphor now that your young brains may not understand, but he's not actually saying that. He's saying in a metaphorical world.
I am trying to weaponize the large part of our audience that is between the ages of 5 and 18.